Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find the show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And if you are new to the show, there are lots of ways to listen. You can, of course, follow me through RSS feed and also on YouTube. I am on TuneIn, Stitcher, iTunes. I think I'm on Google Play. There's another Play FM. There's a whole bunch that you can find on my website. Of course, you can find everything archived at American Freedom Radio. Later on Friday nights, I am replayed from 10 to midnight on a host of other networks, including Awake and People's Internet Radio. I'm on Ed Opperman's Spreaker channel. And you can also find me on Saturdays from 6 to 8 Mountain Time on KYAH 540 AM in Utah. And soon there will be, I think we'll be adding a few other ones possibly in the near future that I will let you all know about. It is good to be back after a 2-week hiatus. I was on vacation, as I think probably all of you will have known. I had a very good episode that I played the first week that I was away, a pre-recorded show I did with journalist Judy Rivera, all about her new book, In Praise of Blood, which is all about the war crimes of the Rwandan Patriotic Front and Paul Kagame. So if you haven't checked that one out, I highly recommend you do. It was a great show, lots of information. Hopefully I'll be able to get Judy back on again when maybe when we have some more developments and stuff going on in Rwanda, or just to have her back on again, because she's just a wealth of knowledge. I know many of you will probably have noticed that I didn't upload a bonus podcast to Patreon. My sincere apologies for that. But between getting everything ready for my vacation and whatnot, I just didn't really have the time. I was planning on recording something like a day before I left, but it just didn't really happen. But I will have a new bonus podcast up, hopefully in about a week or so. I've got some ideas for a new show, so rest assured, faithful listeners, there will be a new bonus podcast. Of course, if you want to support me, you can always go to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. You can become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month, which of course grants you access to the exclusive bonus podcast. And before I get into today's show and introduce my guest, I just wanted to just say that this episode is going to be dedicated to my Auntie Kay Finnegan, who unfortunately passed away on Sunday at the age of 104 years old, if you can believe that. And so this episode is dedicated to Auntie Kay, who was a huge presence in my life, very important person for me, a very loving woman who had a truly amazing life, even at 104, traveled all around the world, experienced lots of stuff. And my Auntie Kay is sort of like a one of my sort of kindred spirits when it comes to conspiracy theory, and much of my interest and stuff like that I trace back to my Auntie Kay, who was always fascinated by crazy conspiracy theories and things like that, and she always encouraged me, even in her old age, to keep pursuing that kind of stuff. And she was a very open woman and also very tech savvy. She used email up until she was about 100 to 101 when her mind sort of started to fade. But I miss you tremendously, Auntie Kay, and so this episode is dedicated to you and to your memory. But let me bring on my guest, who I hope now all of the listeners are somewhat familiar with. And my guest for today for the 2 hours is Yuval Laor, who is one of my co-hosts on a new podcast that we just started on the Open Minds Foundation, which is called Open Minds on Air. That is the name of the podcast, and you can find all of that by going to openmindsfoundation.org. And Yuval, how are you? It's good to be speaking with you again.
Good to be here. Sorry about your aunt.
It's okay. I mean, it was certainly her time to go, and if I'm being totally honest, she really hated being 104 and hated being alive. I mean, all of her contemporaries were gone, so I think it was it was okay, but it still kind of bums you out. But what are you gonna do? And 104 is a pretty long life. I think we should all be so lucky. But as I mentioned, Yuval is one of my co-hosts on Open Minds on Air, and the first episode of which is out right now and has been for a couple of weeks, and the second episode should be out probably either later this week or the beginning of next week, hopefully by Monday. And we've got lots of plans for future episodes. But Yuval, in case there are listeners that are a little unfamiliar with you, give us a little bit of background as to who is Yuval Laor.
Well, I'm an Israeli American. I live in Boulder, Colorado, even though at the moment I am in Nice in France. I wrote a PhD dissertation about the evolution of the human capacity for fervor, or zeal, as it is also called. So I study the emotion cluster of awe. So that would be awe, mystery, sublime, those kind of emotions, the state of fervor, and the capacity for humans to undergo sudden religious conversions. I'm a pro-Palestinian draft dodger when I lived in Israel, but now I live in the United States. What else? I guess that's some background.
Yeah, and well, excellent. And if people are interested in some of Yuval's work, you can of course go to openmindsfoundation.org. Where there's several articles that Yuval wrote, and if you're interested in this sort of religious zeal and awe and stuff, that is actually the second episode of our new podcast touches on that. We'll go into great detail about that, and it's probably a topic that we will discuss again, and we might even discuss it a bit right now. But Yuval, why don't you also let the listeners know? I mean, you are in Nice right now working on your book, right?
Yes, so I'm working on my book. Hopefully, it will be done in a few months, and maybe if you're listening to it in the future, the book is already available. So,
excellent.
The current working title is The Spiritual Primate: Theory of Awe and Fervor, or something like that. So.
Well, and we will definitely be talking about that probably on both shows in the near future when it's out. I'm very excited to read it as well. So, Yuval, you and I, we were I guess the basis of today's episode, or the real kind of thrust of it, we were going to get into the neoconservative movement and agenda and what's going on with them. It's something that you and I are both fascinated with, and certainly the neocons have had a serious amount of undue influence on American foreign policy, American culture, and their influence and domination of foreign policy in particular has affected the United States and the world for the past, I don't know, I mean, we could probably trace it, at least from the 80s onwards. And of course, under George W. Bush, their influence was quite extreme. And although right now with Donald Trump, we are beginning to see them kind of poking their heads out of the sand again, and several prominent neocons are within the administration that we'll get into. But I originally was going to kind of kick off this. I wanted to kind of talk about something topical but a little bit lighter, and I was going to talk about the Giro d'Italia, which is the Tour of Italy, which is one of the three major grand tours in cycling, kicked off its 101st edition just a few days ago in Israel, and we were going to kind of get into that. And maybe towards the end of the show we can kind of touch on that, because I did want to get your perspective on the idea of a boycott, and as someone that has spent time and lived in Israel, as born there, I think your perspective would be quite interesting. But there's even more kind of topical news. Literally an hour ago, our illustrious president, the great one, Donald Trump, announced that he was leaving the Iran nuclear deal. And this was, I guess many of us, sort of saw this coming, and certainly he had been hyping that this is what was going to happen. But this, is of course big news. He announced it and signed a presidential memorandum removing the U.S. from this negotiated deal. Just a little background if people are a little unfamiliar. I mean, this was a deal negotiated between Iran, the U.S., Russia, China, Germany, the U.K., and France. So no one really is sure at the moment where the other countries within this treaty stand and what's going to happen. Of course, Donald Trump has said that, by leaving, we're going to re-implement our crippling sanctions, the biggest, baddest, most powerful sanctions the world has ever seen, and that anyone doing business with Iran will also be hurt by the sanctions. So certainly there are lots of European businesses and banks right now that have been able to operate in Iran after not, when the original sanctions were lifted back in 2015-16 when the deal was negotiated. But I think this is a good topic to kind of start the conversation with, because of course this is like a neocon's wet dream. During when the speech ended and the camera sort of panned as Donald Trump was sort of exiting out of I forget what room he was in, you could see his newly minted national security advisor John Bolton, who's a rabid neoconservative, and it almost gives neocons like a bad name now. They don't like John Bolton because he's so over the top, but he had this cheeky little smile on his face, and you could just tell that the speech was pure Bolton. This is certainly much of his influence, but I think this is a good sort of starting point to kind of ease into our larger conversation about the neocons. But Yuval, I mean, what do you make of Donald Trump leaving the Iran deal? He also quoted a recent fairly dubious intelligence report that Netanyahu released talking about Iran's nuclear capacity and stuff like that. And of course Netanyahu and his administration came out immediately with a press statement, saying how wonderful this was. This is, great for the world and the Middle East, and this will make us all safer. So, Yuval, what do you make of Donald Trump leaving the Iran deal?
Well, it's obviously a very, very sad day in that regard, but the worrying thing is that it's a step in the way to war, of regime change in Iran, which could be a horrible, horrible disaster. So let's hope it's not heading there, even though Israel, and especially when led by Benjamin Netanyahu, is pushing as hard as they can for a war. The Saudi Arabians also wouldn't mind the war, but they're not as vocal, and it's very disturbing.
No, it's funny too. I was watching Bloomberg, just before the speech and then during the speech, and they had Eli Lake, who's a contributor to Bloomberg, again a noted neoconservative, although he claims that he's not, and that term doesn't even mean anything, and whatever, which is a bunch of BS, but we'll give him that. And Eli Lake was sort of talking about, well, this would be great, when we leave, that then we can create a back channel with the democracy movement within Iran, and we can kind of foment regime change that way. And that's really code for the MEK, which is a terrorist cult that was kicked out of Iran and then was later kicked out of Iraq. They worked for Saddam and whatnot. And the MEK is quite an interesting group. But that's really code word for MEK operatives working within Iran. And indeed, during the last sort of strange protests that were happening in Tehran and Shiraz and a couple other major cities, they seem to be orchestrated in large part by the MEK. It was the MEK that was providing most of the news outlets with updates, and videos that were coming out of some of these cities where the protests were happening were from MEK operatives or MEK-friendly media outlets. So that is also quite worrying. Again, this idea of regime change, and it really is. The thing that gets me most is that what are we really getting out of this? There's absolutely nothing. If according to Trump, within the deal they were going to build a nuclear weapon, well, what's going to stop them if they're not in the deal? Nothing. So this is essentially just seems like one big opening for regime change and war. And as I mentioned, I was watching Bloomberg, and of course, Bloomberg loves infographics during their news feed. So they had Trump in the corner in a sort of small image during his speech, and then just plastered across the rest of the screen was stock prices for crude oil, which plummeted dramatically. And then it was like Raytheon stock skyrocketing, Lockheed Martin stock skyrocketing, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, all of these arms manufacturers and defense contractors, their stock is just skyrocketing as Donald Trump is talking about this. So again, obviously they can read the tea leaves and things like that. Yuval, just as someone that would probably have a more unique perspective on this, within Israel right now, is the left within Israel is just sort of all but disappeared for the most part. But generally speaking, the public there was not in favor of the Iran deal. And what's do average Israeli citizens, as best you can describe it, do they feel this is a good thing, a bad thing? Do they feel safer without this? What's your kind of perspective on that?
Well, first of all, you need to remember that Israel is the only country in the world where Trump is popular. Yeah. Just like the United States is the only country in the world where Benjamin Netanyahu is popular. So, Israel is the public in Israel. It has a neoconservative mindset, or many of them, and it's very sad, and it's very I think that it's related to Holocaust trauma. Even Shimon Peres, the former Israeli prime minister, just a couple of years ago, he said that Iran is working on a flying gas chamber, which is how he was describing their imagined Iran nuclear weapons program. Israel is a place where, and I think that this is also true of the neoconservatives, where they think that a Holocaust against the Jews is something that is continuously needed to be held back. That if we don't do anything, the Gentiles are going to get together and murder all the Jews. And so we always need to continuously repel that. And it's this kind of paranoia that can justify all sorts of crazy, irrational policies, and they see Hitler everywhere, and the year is always 1938, and the messages that they get from World War II is that diplomacy should never be done, that American isolationism is horrible. That war should always be, preempted. It's very and that liberal institutions will not be able to hold back, someone like a Hitler, which of course everybody takes turn as being the Hitler du jour, Hitler of the day. With this kind of mindset, it is understood. You can sort of understand why Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu as well would welcome war with Iran, and they're happy with an endless war in Syria. It's really quite sad.
Mm. And I mean, again, Yuval, it is probably safe to say this is the sort of majority of the mindset within Israel. I mean, I can speak to my very limited experience in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv several years ago, but that was my general take. Was like you said, that basically diplomacy doesn't work. There's no point to it, and almost all the young people, people my age that I met, felt this way. And we actually talked about this a few weeks ago. The young people in Israel nowadays are even more kind of radical and right wing than their parents, and then people that may have actually been affected by something like the Holocaust. I mean, maybe you can kind of speak to that a little bit, Yuval, because this goes towards one of the things we wanted to explore in terms of the neocons is the almost the exploitation of trauma, and how things like the Holocaust are used by neocons and their ilk in order to basically convince people that endless war, draconian national security policies are all a good thing. And maybe you can kind of expand on that a little bit, talking about how is trauma exploited, let's say in Israel at like a younger and younger age. You were telling me some kind of wild stuff that I didn't even know about happens to like school children essentially, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, Israel might be the only country in the world where young people are more racist than old people and more religious. And I think that one of the things that's contributed greatly to that is that for about maybe the last 20 years, high school students in Israel, Jewish high school students, many of them go to Poland on a trip around age 16, 17, and there they are, traumatized systematically, and it's the Holocaust is such an endless subject. You can read endless amounts of it. You can delve as deep as you want into it, but going to Poland and being part of a group that is traumatized, with guided imagination and all of this, and they're trying to feel what it was like to be in the Holocaust. It's not about what happened; it's what it felt like. After that, they come back to Israel and they join the military. And there's many fighter pilots that might drop a bomb on Gaza, thinking, Auschwitz, never again. It's very sad, but the Holocaust sort of trauma is it's, first of all, I was traumatized by it as I grew up. I mean, I remember as my earliest memories. I have as a 5-year-old, I would watch on television, especially on Holocaust Memorial Day once a year. But this would be shows that were shown on the we only had one channel back then, and so I saw the Bergen-Belsen, and I saw the hardcore Holocaust as a very young child, and I remember having nightmares about it. And one of the things, if you, when you were in Israel, did you go to the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Tel Aviv?
I did. No, I didn't. I only really had one day in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. No,
so
this
I
is
didn't.
in Jerusalem.
Okay. No, I didn't see that either. No.
Yeah. So it's, first of all, there is a law in Israel that any diplomat that comes to Israel in a diplomatic setting must visit that museum. So there are people who come to Israel for a couple of hours, they have a meeting, and then they run through the museum and they fly out. Yeah. Now the way the museum is set up is that you first of all it shows you what it was like to be in the Holocaust and all sorts of horrible things. And then it presents Israel as sort of either the antidote, or as the what will make sure that this doesn't happen again, and sort of this triumph of Israel as this and the purpose of Israel is to make sure that another Holocaust against the Jews doesn't happen. And I think that there's other lessons that you can learn from the Holocaust. For example, not to be racist. For example, not to insist on reproductive isolation as a good thing, and keeping the blood pure. There's all sorts of other things that you might learn from the Holocaust. But the trauma that people are made to experience in the museum creates it's like an awe experience. It's the negative kind of awe experience. It's not like when it's not a good experience that gives you awe. It's a bad experience that gives you awe. But when you have awe experiences, you can come to conclusions that are completely unrelated to the experience. So if you see a miracle, which is the source of awe, you can come to conclusions that are not related to that miracle, right? So right. For example, Jesus walking on the water was interpreted by the people who saw him as a proof that ghosts exist, in the biblical story. But someone walking on the water can prove, that Islam is correct, that Buddhism is correct. What you see is that the cause of the awe can make you think that something has been proven when it hasn't. So you go to the museum, you're traumatized by the Holocaust imagery, and then you, as part of that awe, you're seeing that the conclusion is that Zionism is good. And you see that in movies like Schindler's List. Again, in Schindler's List, the movie ends in Israel, in Jerusalem, as sort of the conclusion.
Right. That's the ultimate end result.
Yeah, and so instead of having an a message that says that now that we've seen the Holocaust, we should not base countries on blood. Instead, it actually gives the message that we should have this country based on, imagined pure blood purity. It's not real blood, but it needs to be a Jewish one. So it's a very problematic message, but people don't notice because of the awe that is induced by the trauma of the experiencing the Holocaust narrative. People don't notice that the Holocaust doesn't support Israeli behavior towards Palestinians, towards minorities. It just sort of becomes taken for granted, and I think that this is something that happened to some extent to many neoconservatives themselves. So once you have a very strong awe experience, right, when you feel that you saw the really real. You know, you have a strong feeling of knowing. That sort of comes with it. That comes with a blind spot, right? Because whenever you have an experience where you see things as they really are, that's how it feels like. Then you need to not see things that contradict those conclusions. You need to you know, I'm trying to rationalize and understand neoconservative thinking as people who are manipulated by a sort of trauma, and it's, you know, I'm sure that there are some of them that are and some of them that are not. You know, there's different, I guess, reasons to be neoconservatives, but the you know, the way that so many neoconservatives are Jewish, and the way that Holocaust trauma has been used, it's really quite effective.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to kind of ask you a bit about that, because part of me is a little, I don't know. I feel like some of the Jewish roots of some of the early neoconservative movement and stuff has sort of been overdone, you know, and it tends to, you know, kind of almost just fall into this like offensive, you know, Zionists are all evil and bloodthirsty, and you know, the neocons are just the next extension of that. But do you, I mean, Yuval, in your own opinion, I mean, do you think that has played a significant role in the sort of more reactionary viewpoint that many neocons have, that sort of trauma of say the Holocaust?
Yeah, well, so first of all, of course, I'm not saying that the Jews are
no, of course.
conservative. I'm saying that many neoconservatives happen to be Jews, and I think that there this kind of Holocaust trauma. Now, if you look at the previous generation before the neocons, where you had Henry Kissinger's and the Zbigniew Brzezinski's, the world, which come from academia, and they're not neoconservative, but they are very warmongers, and they also got the wrong message from World War II. But Zbigniew Brzezinski, you could say that he was, you know, this is the defense minister of the Carter administration, the guy who is a very, very negative, you know, history this person had. He's sort of the continuing of a Henry Kissinger kind of a person.
Sure.
He was traumatized by the devastation of the Polish people in World War II. So you get this anti-diplomacy, or you know, warmongering kind of attitude by people who were traumatized. You know, at least to some level, the trauma affected them. But I think that because it is so much easier for Jews to traumatize themselves, because there's so many Holocaust movies. So I think, and Jews who watch them, it's easier for them to internalize that and come to conclusions that, you know, this is the natural state. This is the big stakes. There's going to be another Holocaust around the corner, and you know, Iran is building flying gas chambers, as Shimon Peres said, and you know, Saddam is Hitler now, and now Iran is Hitler, and Gaddafi was Hitler. There was all sorts of people who take that role, and I think that Jews are now. Some, of course, have also personal history where, you know, they might have lost family members, but you know, I remember when I was a kid, it was Holocaust Memorial Day, and we were in school where everybody was, you know, hearing stories from the Holocaust, and a friend of mine who's who's she's from Iraqi. Her grandparents lived in Iraq. She told me that she went back home. She asked her grandfather, "Where were you in the Holocaust?" And he told her that he was in Baghdad and he didn't go through the Holocaust. And she said she was disappointed. She was, she felt left out, which is a horrible thing to think about.
Right.
That people, but this is the mindset in Israel. People really, it's very easy for people to get caught in this obsession of reading more about it and what it felt like and what it was like. And, I went to the Genocide Museum in Armenia when I was in Armenia, and their museum was all about what happened. It was not about what it felt like.
Right.
But the museum also in Washington, D.C., there's a museum that, like Israel, it's all about what did it feel like to go through the Holocaust, which is extra traumatizing, I think. So there's all those ready tools, and there's really good movies. There's really good Holocaust movies. And, in Israel back in the day, there was people were talking against Sophie's Choice because Sophie's Choice was sort of a Holocaust movie, but it wasn't focused on Jewish people. So Sophie in the movie, she's a Christian that goes through the death camps, but Israel were upset about it. And by the way, I should plug my friend's movie, and he's an award-winning documentarist. And he made a movie by the name of Defamation. And it's a documentary about different aspects of anti-Semitism and thinking about anti-Semitism in Israel and among other Jewish people. And it's completely fascinating. It's very, very interesting. But he goes with an Israeli group of high school students that go to Poland. And it's very disturbing. Just the level of manipulation, but also their attitudes. He talks to those high school kids, and they see they're sure that everybody people outside walking outside are all anti-Semites, and that they're in danger of. But it's a very and it's a very funny and entertaining movie, so it's highly recommended.
And Yuval, in terms of a lot of the stuff that you research and focus on also has to do with cult groups or using a cult group as a sort of like a template to talk about undue influence, toxic relationships, manipulation. It really happens more so outside of cult groups, but cult groups are a great sort of template because they're so extreme in the sort of methodology and stuff they use. I mean, is it fair to say, that is what is being employed within the state of Israel in terms of the influence that they're having on young people and stuff? And then let's move that out a bit and kind of turn that into the neoconservative movement as well. I mean, do you see the parallels there?
So, well, first of all, let me comment that because I look at the evolution of the human capacity to have awe experiences, mystical experiences, looking at things from an evolutionary perspective makes you focus on extreme cases, not on commonplace. So what is common is also very interesting, but in evolution, if we find one cat that can speak English, we'll rethink the evolution of all cats in all languages.
Right.
The fact that it's rare does not mean that we shouldn't look at it. So that is sort of the justification for why I focus on cults and groups with extreme levels of fervor, with high levels of cultural uniformity within the group, right? So that they're all in some way similar, the members. Now, when it comes to Israel, I think that we have nationalist fervor. It's not religious fervor. It also can interact with religious fervor, but it's because there's a lot of people who are religious in Israel, and there's many aspects of in Judaism, for example, in Passover. There's and Israelis understand what they read when they read the Passover texts, right? The Haggadah. Americans might read it, American Jews, without understanding what's going on, so that's a different thing. But in Hebrew, the narrative is very clear. It says that every generation the Gentiles try to kill the Jews, and every generation God saves us from them. And of course, sometimes He doesn't, I guess, but. So there are religious narratives that sort of interact with this kind of and create Jewish supremacism. I think that I grew up as a Jewish supremacist. It's sort of like a white supremacist. It's strange that we don't have a term. We have a term for anti-Semitism, which is supposed to be a special kind of racism, but we don't have a term for Jewish supremacism. But it is very common in Israel, and also in the education system, which has been deteriorating for 40 years now. All you get is Jews. History is Jews, literature is Jews. History is Jews. It's sort of people can leave Israeli high school and think that the Jews did everything. So in Israel, I think that you do have high fervor. It's not a cultic situation because you don't have actual mechanisms that enforce people to be high fervor. But Israel is higher fervor. The military contributes to that as well. So people have extremely strong feelings of knowing and awe experiences when they're sleep deprived in the military, and they take oaths in front of those vast landscapes that they feel are sort of authentic and things like that. I don't know where I was going with this. No, so you're asking about the cultic elements in the neoconservatives. Now, the neoconservatives, they do have like a secret society element to them. You had the students of Leo Strauss. You have but I don't know how much that really happens. I mean, is there sort of do the neoconservatives ever meet and have a ceremony together? I assume they don't.
There is have you ever heard of the Council for National Policy? That is sort of they're not all. They are more or less neoconservatives within that, and that particularly are really like the hardcore Christian neocons. But that is sort of like that because that is a very elite. They call themselves sort of like a think tank, but it sort of goes beyond that. But that is a very secretive elite think tank that meets in secret. Their membership list is not publicly known, and the Council for National Policy does have a tremendous amount of influence on foreign policy and also social policy as well. Phyllis Schlafly was a noted member of the CNP, and she, of course, had all sorts of idiotic things to say about social things, women and men and things of that sort. So there is that kind to a degree. But I know what you mean. I don't think the neocons really anymore meet, in secret. Although I do kind of wonder. At some point they must have been coordinating to a degree. Particularly under Bush. And now, they kind of seem to be. This is something I wanted to get to a little bit later, but maybe we'll bring it up now. They remind me of a cult or a cultic group in the sense that they are constantly reinventing themselves when reality and truth kind of catches up with them. So as as more information comes out about certain neocons plotting together to go into Iraq and go after Afghanistan and things of that nature, they've had to kind of reinvent themselves. And we see now, Bill Kristol is sort of, won't use the term neocon, and he's sort of changed his tune, and we see a lot of these organizations that have, like the Council for, PNAC, they've changed their name like 3 or 4 times, but it is essentially the same organization that it was just before 9/11. So, in that sense, they do remind me of a cultic group in that they're able to constantly adapt. I don't know. I mean, do you see that at all, Yuval?
Well, I think that's more of like a secret society kind of dynamic. I think that many times in cults, cults can become so divorced from reality, and of course, the neocons are divorced from reality regarding politics. But cults get to the level where they would not be as functioning. Their PR would not be so good. They would not. The cult members, when you talk to them about the world, they seem like something's different with them. Well, neocons seem like they're regular people. They just have opinions that are just
super out there.
Yeah, they're opinions, but it doesn't enter. But I'm not sure. It depends on the kind of experiences that they have together. Whether or not they're, I would call them a cult, but certainly I would call them a sort, what looks like a secret society. But I think that if we just look at the neoconservatives and not look at the people like, the Hillary Clinton or the Clintons in general, or a lot of other figures that are not actually neoconservatives, or they're not card-carrying, but they're very easy. It's very easy to convince them. They're very easily influenced by neoconservatives. And I think that many times, for example, I remember when John Kerry was running for president, and he went to Israel, and he was standing by Mitzada, which is, a story, a traumatizing story from the ancient world, from the Roman Empire. And he was standing in front of this huge grand view that is very awe-inspiring, because vastness is one of the things that is very inspires awe. And he was yelling into the vast open spaces, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel is alive, sort of in a defiance of the Holocaust. And Israel is so good at creating those peak experiences in people that even if he was, and John Kerry might have been influenced by it, but not, to the point of making him a neocon, not saying, he is still, but I think that having those kind of experiences, being exposed, having watched Holocaust movies that end with a, pro-Zionist message, and I think it makes a lot of politicians more receptive to the neoconservative message when it comes, even though the message itself is insane. It's kind of endless war. Diplomacy is always bad. War is always the answer. We should do regime change and destabilize countries and call it, supporting democracy, when it's actually simply. And it fails again and again and again. It's always a disaster. But from my perspective, it's a disaster. I think that neocons think of it as a good thing, right? John Bolton still supports the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, right?
Oh yeah, they all do. Yeah, I mean it's of course they think it's all good. Well, I mean, yeah, I think in a weird way it you know, they are sort of validated in that belief, in that they're never really held accountable. You know, it's John Bolton is in an even more powerful position now than he was when he was UN ambassador. You know, and that was at the height of the neocons' influence in Washington. He's in an even more powerful position now. You know, and there's no repercussions for any of the lies and crazy rhetoric that he and many others espouse. So I think, you know, in even though ultimately, you know, I don't know really what is better about Iraq or Afghanistan or Yemen or Somalia or Libya or any of these countries. I don't know what's better now that we've overthrown their leaders and you know, either installed useless puppets that have no power or have just sort of, like Libya, turned it into one sort of open air prison, you know, war camp. You know, but to them it's like, well, it's all fine. You know, I mean, they keep getting elected and elevated, and so I think I think to them they truly do believe that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, you have the compliance of the media, right? So MSNBC cannot stop having neocons on, you know, as
oh my God, I know.
And you have Vice News, so you have all sorts of media support, which is very, very problematic. But I think that if you would ask, you know, well, you know, they might not answer truthfully, but I think that they would tell you that the possibility of Iraq killing all the Jews, or you know, sending their own flying gas chamber nuclear weapon kind of thing towards Israel is lower now in Libya, and so as such, the world is better.
Right. Exactly. No. Yeah. Exactly. That it's all worked out. You know, even though I mean, arguably, you can make the point that it's way you know, it's you know, way less safe now, and that threat is possibly even more real than under Saddam, who, you know, was, I mean, he'd have nothing to gain from you know, attacking Israel or anyone else.
Yeah, but it's in the imagination, you know. It's
Anyway, we're at the break right now. We're going to continue discussing, so please stay tuned.
I like very much
radio. You're an American institution. American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Quality, value, style, service, selection, convenience, economy, savings, performance, experience, hospitality, low rates, friendly service, name brands, easy terms, affordable prices, money-back guarantee, free installation. Free admission, free appraisal, free alterations, free delivery, free estimates, free home trial, and free parking. No cash, no problem, no kidding. No fuss, no muss, no risk, no obligation, no red tape, no down payment, no entry fee, no hidden charges, no purchase necessary, no one will call on you, no payments or interest till September. But limited time only, though, so act now, order today, send no money, offer good while supplies last, 2 to a customer, each item sold separately, batteries not included, mileage may vary, all sales are final, allow 6 weeks for delivery, some items not available, some assembly required, some restrictions may apply. So come on in. Come on in. Come on in. There you. So come on in for a free demonstration and a free consultation with our friendly professional staff. Our experienced and knowledgeable sales representatives will help you make a selection that's just right for you and just right for your budget. And say, don't forget to pick up your free gift, a classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high quality, premium, select, gourmet pocket pencil sharpener. Yours for the asking, no purchase necessary. It's our way of saying thank you. And if you act now, we'll include an extra added free complimentary bonus gift, a classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high quality, premium, select, gourmet combination key ring, magnifying glass, and garden hose in a genuine imitation leather style carrying case with authentic vinyl trim. Yours for the asking, no purchase necessary. It's our way of saying thank you. Actually, it's our way of saying bend over just a little bit farther.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. My apologies if we lost a little bit of the audio towards the tail end of the first hour, but we had some weird internet issues, but I think it all kind of got through just before the commercial break there. But if not, Danny will be able to fix it up as he always does. And of course, shout out to Danny Romero, who is the man behind the scenes of my show and of all of the shows on AFR, who's always, helpful, and I wouldn't be here without Danny. And, he's great, especially in a jam like that. I always start panicking, and Danny's always cool-headed and figures it out. So thank you, Danny. But if you are just joining us right now in the second hour, we have been speaking with Yuval Laor, who I should actually just mention a little bit. But Yuval, you are on the review board for the research coordinator, and I always mess that up. But you are on the board. Review board at Open Minds Foundation, and if you can hear, it's a fire truck out my window again. And you are in charge of research at Open Minds. And of course, Yuval is also one of my co-hosts on Open Minds on Air, which I highly recommend everyone goes and checks out. You can find that at the Open Minds Foundation. And we've been discussing the neoconservative movement, and we've been discussing it too from I think a slightly different angle than the one that we normally kind of hear on my show and on other shows when you talk about it. And we've been kind of diving a bit more into the psychological aspects of it, which I think is important because it's something that is not generally explored when talking about the neocons. I think in part because there's so many other kind of crazy things that they're involved in, and we don't take a step back and look at the some of the psychological elements that are at play there. But you were mentioning, Yuval, about John Kerry was at Masada chanting, and again, this is a very awe-inspiring moment in history, and geographically very awe-inspiring, and this creates obviously a fervor in many people, and it certainly did in John Kerry. Something that was interesting there you're mentioning is that, again, how awe and fervor in these things can kind of convince people that are not, that maybe you wouldn't immediately categorize as, say, a neoconservative. And I don't think John Kerry really is. I mean, you can make that argument, I guess. I mean, he's probably more closer to a neoliberal, which is basically the same thing as a neocon at this point. But he doesn't fit in. Oh no, jump in, Yuval.
He's much better than people like Clinton, So, but comparatively, he's better. But and he even, said some things about against Israeli occupation of Palestine. So that is something that is you don't. But he didn't say that before he was running for president.
Oh well, and people are always quick, and I have too, to hate on John Kerry, and there's plenty to hate about with him. But people always forget that he spearheaded, the Iran-Contra investigations while he was in the Senate. And John Kerry, believe it or not, openly admitted in Congress that the CIA was in fact trafficking cocaine, or helping to facilitate the traffic of cocaine into America on behalf of the Contras. And I think this was well before John Kerry decided to sort of enter into the serious upper echelons of government and into that sort of elite club. But you can don't forget that.
I used him as an example just because he is someone that is sort of further to the left. I think he supported the Iran agreement that is being abolished as we speak. So even him could be I saw him being manipulated in a way, standing in front of this thing, yelling in Hebrew, "The nation of Israel is alive." He probably has been to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem a little before that, and he felt the mission, and it's kind of gives you a feeling of knowing that can override logical thinking. Now, in his case, I think that he's not actually as bad, hardly as bad as people like Hillary Clinton, but this kind of emotional manipulation that people can experience when they go on a state visit to Israel, I think, can be very, very strong and underappreciated as something that is supports a neoconservative agenda. Especially when Israel is led by openly neoconservative, or not openly, but people like Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, there's also we haven't even we never mentioned it, Yuval, but I'm sure you've heard of Jerusalem syndrome, which is not like I don't believe that's like a actual clinical diagnosis, but that definitely, I noticed that when I was in Jerusalem, people kind of suffering, particularly a lot of these evangelical Christians that come to Jerusalem, and most of the time on these very curated, very controlled tours, but they become obsessive over being in Jerusalem, and I'm almost to I could see in the near future, it becoming more of a clinical sort of thing. But people become almost like psychotic about being in Jerusalem and the history and the religion. And to their credit, it does kind of happen a bit. It is wild.
It's a combination of a lot of awe-inducing elements. So awe is induced by things that are sufficiently strange, like miracles, or vastness is a big one. Celebrities is a big one.
Oh yeah.
Even that could be a felt presence, right? So if you feel like God was with you, that can be like a celebrity-induced awe. And also beauty, of course, and trauma. So when people go to Israel, first of all, Jerusalem is very pretty. It is what you see is an Ottoman city. So it's strange that people think of the Bible while looking at a city built by Sultan Suleiman, in the 16th century. But the vastness also is temporal vastness. So they feel, because they're connected to the ancient world, the world gets created on the Temple Mount. There's a feeling that they're connecting to ancient things, and that can be and the beauty of the place. It can be very, very influential. I was once talking to a taxi driver in Colorado, and she was telling me how that she's I think evangelical Christian, certainly some kind of high fervor Protestant, And that she went to Israel, that she was initially disappointed, and she thought, and she was didn't like the fact that there's cats everywhere.
A ton of cats.
Then she told me that she saw a white-winged dove, and which is a symbol of the Holy Spirit, and that really affected her, and sort of she had this. That was the trigger, with the everything else that sort of gave her a mystical experience that proved to her, all those things that all those narratives that she was being exposed to while she was there. But of course, white-winged doves are not something that are, that should affect people in that way. I wouldn't think. But in this case, I mean, this. Whatever, different people can be affected by different things, but it can be a very banal thing that combines with, of course, expectations and assumptions and the whole context of the thing. That there's also, you go there in a group, so you can have emotional contagion. Other people are feeling awe, so you feel it with them. And there are. It's strange when you go to Jerusalem. Did you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Oh yeah, of course, and that's where you really kind of feel it, where everyone is rubbing the stone and praying and kneeling. I mean, there's the
crucified. Different churches will tell you it was crucified.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. They're
part of the church, but it's strange because it's such an Ottoman building because it has this. It is 17 different churches, I think, that they.
Oh yeah. It's a hodgepodge of it's everything.
But it's sort of only Muslims could arrange this kind of agreement because they really don't like each other. So when you go there, the other tourists are all having emotional experiences. But if you look at the different monks or religious people, they're not. The thing is that they all see heathens. They see the tourists as believers, and some of them might be Catholic, some of them, but it might be a different church than mine, and and so they're completely not the people who live and work there. And I went to a midnight mass, and everybody, all the tourists that came were all very. They felt a lot of reverie to the situation and everything. But and different churches would be doing different things, each one in their own section of the church. But the monks, when they were done with their prayer, they weren't trying to be quiet for the other people. They couldn't, and they really see it as fake. Because, it's 17 different churches that they all really don't like each other and each other's believers. So it's an interesting combination. But yeah, the awe that is induced there, it's you can catch it from other people. You can feel it in the air. And people hold candles and it can be quite impressive. Even I'm an atheist and I don't believe in any of it, but I can understand the how you can catch it from others when you go there.
Oh, certainly, and I think I would challenge anyone, atheists included, to go to some of these places and not have. There is some feeling that you get that you can't quite explain. And again, too, I mean, I understand to a degree why people suffer from the Jerusalem syndrome, where you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, then you have the Wailing Wall, then you have the Dome of the Rock. You can go to the garden where Jesus prayed. I mean, there's all of these places. Whether you believe in them or not, there is some sort of sense of not really being able to you can't really deny it fully. You know what I mean? That's sort of the sense that I got, that there is something here, that you get this sort of strange feeling. And then even if you just think it's all kind of silly, when you, especially like in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's so many people that are so committed to the, this is truly the stone, that Jesus was laid down on. And that, again, you could be a hardcore atheist. I think it's difficult to sort of dismiss other people's fervor in believing that, to such a strong degree.
And it's people who might have been waiting for decades until they can save enough money to be able to go there. It's people who really are expecting to have very strong experiences there. And also the place looks so different than anything you see in Europe, because it's such an Ottoman architecture. There's a very it doesn't. A lot of people are not used to that kind of aesthetic. Well, I think that people who would come from other cities that sort of look like that in the area might not be quite as impressed, that it would not look as different to them.
Oh, certainly. And again, the architecture specifically in Jerusalem is very specific. And in fact, all the buildings use the same stone. So, especially if you're like kind of flying over it, or if you ever look at it from it's a quite impressive view. This is just a sort of a side, but I remember we went to a cafe in like on top of the Mount of Olives, which is in East Jerusalem. And looking out over the whole city, it is really at like a sunset. It is impressive, even if you're just sort of there to be there. It is awe-inspiring. Again, whether
Olives is where the resurrection of the raising of the dead is supposed to start.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of religious-related things are all over there. It's like the religious Disneyland over there.
Yeah, that's sort of the one problem about it, is that it does kind of feel like a religious Disneyland, especially like in the old city, where everyone is just, it's just basically poor Palestinians trying to sell you shitty trinkets. And some of them are nice, and I of course bought way more than I ever should have when I was in East Jerusalem, and almost got into a serious issue at the airport flying out of Tel Aviv. When they were going through our bags, and I was just, thank God they didn't go into, my bag that had all of this Free Palestine and, all sorts of prayer beads and stuff like that. But, Yuval, we were, well, here was the thing. When I mentioned this sort of John Kerry thing, because that is a sort of high fervor moment, and
it's an awe moment. So it's an awe experience. It's fervor as a state. It's like being in love. It's something that can last months or years. The experience, I would call it a mystical experience, an awe experience, a transcendent experience. So it's an event. So just to differentiate between the terms.
And
it might be fervor-inducing. So you might end up in a state of fervor following a mystical experience, an awe experience, but the event is the experience. Then
with high fervor people, and I think we can agree that the neocons would sort of fall into that category, much of the time at least, and especially when you see some of the the more sort of like blowhards like John Bolton or Rudy Giuliani. When he, I don't know if you watched at the RNC. But, Giuliani gave this very, I don't know, you could say impassioned. He looked more like a, just some sort of, he looked like some kind of coked up lunatic who was just, screaming about 9/11 as he always does, and the terrorists and stuff like that. But certainly this sort of high fervor type thing. And you will talk a little bit about that sort of a person and how that really kind of psychologically changes their thinking. And brings it into a very kind of black and white sort of a territory. Because, again, bringing it back to the neoconservative movement, I mean, much of their thinking, while they will dress it up as having, all of this sort of academic, intellectual pretense, is very black and white. It's really a very simple world philosophy when you kind of break it down. And talk a little bit about that.
So the high fervor, high levels of fervor, and you hope that those neoconservatives have high levels of fervor, because otherwise it just means that they're psychopaths.
Well, some of them definitely are.
Yeah, or it might be both. But so it does lead to black and white thinking. When you have those strong awe experiences, or when you're in a state of fervor, you experience what you think is the really real. So this is not the ordinary real. This is the really real. Now, the really real is a strange thing, because it's people can very easily ignore things that they think are really real. So, a Christian can believe with all their heart in the Christian Bible, but not give all their money to the poor. That really can happen. Not turn the other cheek. And you don't want groups whose texts tell them that they should rely on God for their to keep them alive. And for them to say, okay, I'm relying on God. You want them to keep working. So when I'm saying that things are really real, I'm not. It's not. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily destiny, but the strong awe experiences, when you see that thing, what feels like the ultimate truth, you see things as they really are. That comes with a blind spot initially. Many times that blind spot turns into willful ignorance. So this is sort of, if we go back to the similarities with being in love, you can say that someone that has just fallen in love, fallen madly in love, they are blind to the flaws in the person that they're in love with. But over time, that can turn into willful ignorance, where you choose not to look. So a hardcore Zionist might choose not to look at the treatment of Palestinians. It's not that they know that there's something bad probably there, and they choose to avoid getting the information. So it's so you can have that dynamic. But the strong sense of certainty many times manifests as black and white thinking. You're either with us or against us. It's this kind of it's very problematic, and many times you're not able to distinguish between minor and major things that you might be upset about. You see everything as the same. Someone who says that Israel should give Palestinians whatever more freedom of movement within the West Bank or something, they might see them as the same as an anti-Semite, or
right.
And that's why they see anti-Semitism everywhere. It's also a manipulative techniques, but I think that many of them actually do see the world that way, and it's because they've had a very strong experience. Maybe when they saw a Holocaust movie, maybe when they or it might be religious experience of some sort. And when it comes to someone like Giuliani, I think that what you have this pro-Israel trend within evangelical Christianity since John Nelson Darby, who I think is the sort of the true founder of the Israeli state in the first half of the 19th century, or in the middle of the 19th century, where this Christian idea. You know, he's the guy that came up with the rapture. So, you know, for him there was no rapture. But it's dispensational Christianity, and it's a strange version of Christianity. But one of the they think that there's that we go through 7 phases, right? So there's the right way to live before the flood, and then after the flood, but before Abraham, and then between Abraham and the Bible, right? So all those, and between the Bible and Jesus. And now we're in the 6th, or we're in the 5th. I think we're supposed to start the 6th phase, and to get to that phase, which things need to be complete in the previous phase, and the Jews returning to the land of Israel is a prophecy. It's a one sentence in the book of Daniel, but it's they think that needs to be fulfilled before the end of the world, and the second coming, and the war of Gog and Magog, the Armageddon, all those things. And one of the things that interacts, so that has been something that has been going on since the 19th century, but you do have a very major increase in that kind of American right-wing fervor since the 1970s. And some people attribute it to the Vietnam War, which America, did not win the Vietnam War, or the American War, as they call it in Vietnam. And to rationalize the United States not winning this war, or having to leave, being humiliated by the Vietnamese, to rationalize it, a lot of people turned into this idea that no, bad things are actually good. That whenever if there'll be a war in the Middle East, that's another sign that the second coming is about to show up. So with high levels of fervor, it's very easy to reinterpret good things as bad things, or bad things as good things. You'll have cult members that would have a panic attack, and they're like, "Oh, that's so great that it happened because it meant that traumas were leaving my body." You can rationalize and see things. Bad things as good things, and some people would say that since the 70s you have this increase in that kind of fervor, which comes accidentally, for accidental reasons, also comes with an extreme pro-Israel stance. And I think that in Giuliani you have so people who are in that kind of a mindset, like George W. Bush, the evangelicals that are very pro-Israel for religious reasons, are very easy for neoconservatives to manipulate them into agreeing with neoconservative, way of thinking of things.
Well, speaking about the sort of easily susceptible people to this type of manipulation, I think that kind of brings us to, I guess, sort of where we started the conversation with Donald Trump, reneging on the Iran deal. And now, certainly, this is something that Trump had boasted about during the during all throughout the campaign and the primaries and all that. So, he said this, but he is somebody who, apparently it's just like whoever the last person to talk to him is, that's what his new decision or idea is. And he's someone that seems highly susceptible to manipulation, or to influence, at least. And I know that this is just sort of really kind of burst the bubble that so many people have imagined with Donald Trump, that he's this genius negotiator and, this independent thinker who's not, he doesn't, follow the swamp creatures in Washington or on Wall Street and stuff like that. But really, he is seemingly susceptible to any influence from anyone around him. And as we've seen, as his cabinet has become more and more stacked with neocons, or certainly people that lean in a reactionary right-wing neoconservative agenda. I mean, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, it's Giuliani, for sure, absolutely. Even, Gina Haspel, the CIA, the soon-to-be, probably, director of the CIA. Well, I wouldn't characterize her as necessarily a neocon. I mean, she certainly it follows many of the protocols of neocons, and of course, sort of gained prominence during George Bush and his whole administration, when the neocons just essentially let the CIA run even more wild than they were previous to that. And Yuval, I mean, without getting, I know that people are, you shouldn't, I don't know, therapize or analyze presidents psychologically. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. But how do you see Donald Trump within this light? Psychologically speaking, I mean, he does seem to be a man that is just so easily influenced. And is that something that we see with people as vain as he? Again, he is so vain. You would think that he wouldn't listen to those around him, but he does seem to really kind of follow what anybody tells him. And certainly, I would argue that for all of the rhetoric that we heard from the neocons, during the campaign and then immediately after, that Trump was horrible. We had all of these, David Frum and others, Max Boot, reinventing themselves as, they're not neocons anymore. They're the adults in the room, and they're intelligent and moderate. They were all kind of criticizing Donald Trump. But then, little by little, his rhetoric aligns more and more with essentially what they espouse. Now, he might be saying it in a more bellicose manner, and very over the top, talking about bombing the blank out of Iran and things that they're going after, supposed terrorists, their family members and stuff like that, and killing them. This is all a good thing. That is more or less what the neocons believe. And again, we've seen more and more of these neocons, sort of slipping into the White House and getting into a position of power. And how do you kind of view Donald Trump in a psychological sense with that, where he does seem to be a person that's very easily manipulated into doing and saying things that 20 minutes ago he didn't believe in? And I guess, Yuval, what do you make of that?
So, well, first of all, I think that even before anything about his psychology, the fact that he is ignorant, that he doesn't know anything, I think that plays a very big role. Even if he was, intelligent or didn't suffer from severe narcissism. But so when someone doesn't know anything, it's easier to tell him things, and they all sound correct to him. Now, in addition, I think that he is not smart. Not just uneducated, but also actually not smart. But his severe narcissism. One of the things, and I think that he doesn't really understand other people, and people are also they're black and white to him. They're either all good or all bad. He doesn't have a nuance about himself either, but also about others. And as such, if you sort of are one of the people that he thinks are all good, then he would listen to them. So it's, but at any point he can turn on them and think that they're all bad, right?
Sure, of course.
And we've seen that. And I think that also, there's all sorts of different anecdotes and thought experiments that that appeasing, the diplomacy is appeasement, and that led us to what we're, so there's all those, they keep on harping on a few things, or the ticking bomb scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, which
Iran is now closer
Dershowitz.
than ever. It's Dershowitz too, yeah.
And so when you have a ticking bomb, it's okay to torture people. Now, of course, many times they don't take the next step of pointing out that if you're torturing someone because there's a ticking bomb, then that also justifies torturing their children.
Mm.
So,
And there's almost never a ticking bomb. We should just point out, too.
And in most cases, even if there was, in most cases, the torture would not be the best way to reach the person that would tell you where the bomb is. To actually, sort of convert them to seeing your side could be better, but that doesn't. The fact that we have tortured many of those people does not help.
No.
It's hard to convince them that you're the good guys when people have seen what experienced torture, which is also widely used in Palestine and in Iraq and all those. So with Trump, which is very pro-torture, right? I think that he just he heard that argument. He never heard it before. He never heard a counter argument, and he was convinced. It's horrifying. It is an extremely disturbing situation that we're in. With regarding to him, but I'm not sure. Well, I don't know if Hillary Clinton would not also have those who wanted more muscular foreign policy, she has a lot of problems with Libya and all sorts of. So I think that we were in trouble with either one of them. But yeah, Trump, it is a scary thing. And I voted for Hillary Clinton, someone who I see as close to neoconservative and certainly a neoliberal. But still, Trump made me vote for her. In a swing state in Colorado. So it's.
You know what I think it is, because I know that argument inevitably comes up, and I'm sure we would be in the same place with Hillary Clinton in power, and I would assume, and in some places it would, in Libya it would probably be a little bit worse than it is right now, but that kind of hardly really. Again, I don't really think it matters who you voted for, but the thing that kind of unnerves me a bit more. With the Donald Trump is how easily he is manipulated. That he can, it seems like he hired John Bolton for no other reason than John Bolton was constantly on Fox News, which is probably all he really watches, and all John Bolton did was suck up to him every single night on Sean Hannity, and so he's okay. I'm going to hire John Bolton. The rumors, floating around that Alan Dershowitz might join his illustrious legal team along with Rudy. That's only because they are friends, but because every single day, every tweet that Dershowitz has is talking about how wonderful Trump is, how he's a genius, how everyone is after him. It's all a witch hunt. He's the greatest, president since, I don't know, Jefferson or something. And, that I think plays a lot to Trump. That's, to me, what's more scary, is that it really doesn't take much to butter him up. You look at his visit to Saudi Arabia, where they were clearly doing that. You can look at his visit in France with Macron. Apparently a military parade and a few nice words is all it takes to convince Trump, the anti-globalist, that the extreme globalist Macron is a good guy. and that we should work with him. He's a socialist too. Let's keep in mind, ostensibly, all these things that supposedly Trump finds, just awful and abhorrent. So that's what I find is so interesting. And Yuval, are there any, again, as someone that I know you've like me have looked very deeply into groups like Scientology. I mean, are there any kind of parallels with other historical figures and stuff like that, where they are that kind of susceptible to influence around them like that have sort of attained tremendous power? I mean, I bring up Scientology because I think a lot of people sort of, and I don't really see the comparison fully, compared Trump and Hubbard, and I think there are some similarities, but not a lot, really.
Well, Trump, I think is. I think they are very different. I think Trump would be closer to someone like a Ronald Reagan, but Trump is an extreme case, and I think that we don't really have that much precedence of this kind of narcissist. That I don't know, Wilhelm II. It's hard to think, but. I think that Trump chose someone like Bolton also because just Trump he tries to look the toughest he can. And that's, it's a very simple thing. And so he will say that he's for torture. He'll say he's for murdering the family members of terrorists. He'll say that he's, all sorts of, just because they are the toughest sounding things you could say. It's not, I don't think there's any thought behind it. I think that Bolton just seemed to him as the toughest person, or the person that would make him look the toughest. And I think that the neocons, if there's one thing that they're good at, is making sort of manipulative arguments. If there's anything, that's their experience. It's not thinking. It's all about selling a certain kind of stance, and that worked on Trump so far. But you really hope that there'll be another voice in the room, that would make him get out of that bubble, because so you can have this echo chamber where things, if we go back to Donald Rumsfeld. Who he gave that speech with the known knowns and the known unknowns, and the third one that he mentioned was the unknown unknowns. But what he didn't, the combination that he didn't talk about is the unknown unknowns, the things that but you don't know that you know them. And I think, and that's sort of like the ideology. That's the blindness that we have to sort of ideological assumptions. It's sort of the way that, some people would think that there's a traditional marriage is obvious to them, that's the natural and only possible way. Of course, we know that there's many, many different historical and, cultural variations on marriages. So we know that's not true. It's not an obvious, but it's something that someone might know without realizing that they know it. And with neocons, it's unclear whether they're conscious of their blind spots, their assumptions, or whether or not they're conscious of them, but they're maintaining it because, they do sort of value dishonesty. So it's a problematic thing about taking their words about things. But I think that you can have a situation where it's obvious to everybody that, like the Iran agreement is a horrible mistake that is going to result with Iran having a flying gas chamber, as Shimon Peres called it. And it might be that people will be in the room and they would not notice that things that they take for granted as obviously for them. That is going to be what's going to be driving U.S. policy. So
on that level, and this is a little bit more kind of it's not as transparent as say Shimon Peres's sort of very extreme analogy about Iran's nuclear capabilities, but the neocons they've been doing this for years, but in the past maybe 5-6 months, particularly at places like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which is probably like the premier neocon think tank, and they do actually, I constantly quote them in the Long War Journal. I mean, they do put out ostensibly it's good information, but when they're just sort of reporting factual stuff about terrorism. But they've long been pushing this narrative of Iran and Al Qaeda, and Iran and Bin Laden were that was like the true axis of evil was really Iran and Al Qaeda. And there's some information out there that kind of lends a bit of credence to this, but there's a lot more that it is just sort of really kind of dubious or straight up bogus. But that is that's one of those things that they've repeated it so much. It's now it's like totally acceptable. You can say that at a on a mainstream, you can say that on MSNBC, and everyone just kind of accepts. They know that to be true. Even though there's no evidence, they've never, and the evidence that's out there, they've never even looked at it, but they just begin to accept it.
Al Qaeda is, of course, a Sunni.
Exactly.
And Iran is a Shiite, republic. But so that is obvious. And you said the name of the group was the Center for Democracy. What?
Foundation for Defense of Democracy.
Defense of Democracy, and it's the one of the things that manipulates people, which we haven't mentioned so far, is what are called thought-terminating cliches. I don't know if you know that term.
No. Please explain, Yuval.
So this is suggested by Robert J. Lifton. And thought-terminating cliches are terms that when people hear them, they think they know what they're about. So freedom, right? They hate us for our freedom is and you have American Freedom Radio. Freedom is a thought-terminating cliche, the way it was used. So it is sort of used to end the argument, even though freedom is an essentially contested concept. And it's strange that essentially contested concepts, nobody knows what freedom is. There's freedom to, freedom from, there's the four freedoms, there's all sorts of takes on what freedom might be. But it is used as if, as a cliche that is supposed to stop thinking. You also have them on the left, so you can say that saying that someone is a racist, that's a thought-terminating cliche. It takes away the nuance. It's sort of everything is clear once you said that. Freedom and democracy. Also, democracy. There's many definitions and many takes on what democracy is. But they're used by, and this is not just neocons, this is just general.
Or any totalist group, right?
Yeah, but also just, regular, everyday, state propaganda or whatever. When you pledge allegiance to the flag is a thought-terminating cliche. It's sort of ubiquitous, and in a way, thought needs to be terminated anyway. You cannot think all your terms all the time. You need to sort of think using the terms and take the terms what they mean for granted. But the freedom, which was such a strong so overused and so blatantly used as a thought-terminating cliche by people like George W. Bush, that it was really striking. You know, it was you know, the never was equality. Equality is another thought-terminating cliche, but that one was never used. Always freedom, and nobody knows what freedom is. You know, if you have you know, a healthcare, are you more free or less free? I think you're more free. But for them, of course, they would tell you that you're less free. It's something that I think people like Trump can be very easily manipulated without being noticing even. That, you know, that just the terminology that was used is the kind that takes assumptions, you know, the appeasement, you know, the all sorts of terms that they worked very hard on creating connotations with, and it's scary and disturbing to see. But I think that beyond all the true believers that neocons might or might not be, as I said, they might be just, you know, lying that they're
opportunists.
But you also have corruption that we need to not underestimate. The you know, the Dick Cheneys, the people who are connected with you know, that profit off of war, the people who rationalize being warmongers because, you know, that would help them pass more money to their children, and they're just thinking of family. You know, it's rationalized. You know, when you are set to make a lot of money, when you are shareholders of Raytheon and things like that, it is a lot easier to rationalize and to see the neocon way of looking because you personally gain from it, and it's, you know, it's a big industry, and you know, it's you know, it's another aspect. So it could be that you know, if you think that maybe a war in the Middle East will bring the second coming of Christ, but at the very least you'll make money off of it. It's a lot easier to see the world in this neoconservative black and white sort of way.
Well, certainly, and that I think is especially true when you look at the sort of big arms manufacturers, defense contractors, because they I mean, not only do they view the world in very black and white, but I mean, they really just sort of view it as you know, they're just sort of everyday business. You know, it doesn't really matter who they're selling to or what's happening. You know, people need to buy missiles, and so we're going to build them, and you know, it's fine if they're being used against the Iranians or the Palestinians or, you know, the Yemenis or in Congo or whatever. It doesn't really, you know, they could care less. And yeah, I think it makes the you know, their worldview becomes so encapsulated by that you know, that just sort of justifies everything they do and makes it that much easier to just kind of not only buy into some of the neocon rhetoric, but I think to also, like you were saying, I mean, they may not necessarily be true believers, but you know, they can kind of be close enough, or they just sort of accept it. But
yeah, we used to make weapons to fight wars, and now we fight wars to make weapons, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And more so, it seems. Yuval, we're fast running out of time. I think we probably just have a few minutes left, and I just wanted you to once again just sort of plug your work, anything you're working on, where people can go to find your articles, and I don't think you are, but you're not on social media. Is that correct, Yuval?
Well, you know, I have you know, I made accounts, but I never visit social media. But you know, now I'm focusing on finishing my book. So, you know, people, I am on Facebook and on Twitter, but I just never check it. If you'll send me a message, I will probably get a notification and I'll read it. But soon, when my book will be out, yeah, you can see I have a few things in the Open Minds Foundation. Also, you can read my PhD dissertation if you want. I can email it to you. It's a big thing. But I thought that I wanted to add a joke if I can.
Please do.
And it's about the joke references the Crimean War, and it's about a mother who sends a Russian mother who sends her kid to go and fight the Ottomans, and she tells them, in the morning I want you to eat a big breakfast and then go kill a Turk and then rest, and then after that you have lunch. You kill another Turk, and then you take a break and relax. And he says, well, what if the Turk kills me? She says, why would you do that? What has he ever done to him?
Well, thank you, Yuval Laor, and thank you all so much for listening. We'll be coming to you next week. I'm not sure who my guest will be, but until then, I will be talking to you all very soon.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Do you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the head. Apparently we're not ready for that. Yeah, that's difficult behavior for us. We're too busy sitting around trying to think up ways to kill each other. Here's one we came up with. It's efficient, too. Genocide, you know? Killing large numbers of people simply because they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, and they don't have the same kind of hats you do. You ever notice that anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that. It might be important.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5,